I was drawn to crystals early on, but I didn't allow myself to explore or experience them because I was too concerned with what people might think of me. Back in those days, I was working so hard to prove myself to the world, to the people around me, to myself. I kind of wanted to hide the part of me that was more intuitive, maybe softer and gentler. I was really into fitness at the time. I was a coach. I had been a coach for 8, 9 years full time. I was a competitive CrossFit athlete. I didn't think that crystals were going to make me respectable. And I remember talking to a business coach kind of when this all started to take shape. And I told her, I want to bring crystals into my work with people, but I'm afraid that they won't take me seriously. How can I blend fitness with crystals? And those were my worries that were holding me back at the time. I just did some major inner work and had a lot of breakthroughs that allowed me to really explore my relationship with crystals. No longer was running a gym or coaching full time. And that gave me room to explore these newer interests that I was having. So I bought my first crystal thing, which was this tiny little labradorite. And at the time, I didn't know anything about labradorite. I just liked the necklace. I gave myself permission to buy a pretty thing, a crystal thing that my old self would have judged and been like, that's too woo woo. That's how closed I was. That's how like limited and blocked I was. I was really judging myself for having this attraction to crystals. So I bought this necklace. I bought it at a time when I knew that my coaching was going to change. I was no longer doing in the gym coaching, working one on one with clients. In that space, I was shifting more to mindset and emotional intelligence and spiritual aspects of human beings and bringing that all into my coaching. But it was a scary time because I had known fitness coaching for 9 years and I hadn't really given myself full permission to go into the other aspects of being a human. When I found out that labradorite has this nickname, for the stone of transformation, I realized, wow, that's perfect. I'm like in a huge transformation in my life, probably the biggest transformation of my life. I was in my early 30s at that point. And I thought, geez, it's crazy that I was drawn to a stone that has this nickname at such a transformative time in my life. Maybe there's something to why I was drawn to this stone to begin with. I didn't know the meanings or properties of crystals. I wasn't giving myself full permission yet, but that was a huge turning point. To this day, when the client is working with me, I gift them this necklace because I believe in transformation. I believe that's the most empowering thing is the idea that we can transform ourselves through healing, through awareness, through intentional growth, through experiences, through reflection. So anyways, that was one of the first things that set me off into really exploring this crystal kingdom. And then a second prominent thing that happened was my partner and I had a trip planned to New Mexico. And it was just a trip. I was living in California at the time. And so we went to New Mexico for a 4-day weekend. It was a pretty beautiful place. I was really drawn to the fact that it was called the Land of Enchantment. And I was in a really weird time. I was experiencing new terrain within myself. I realized I have more intuition and I'm drawn to this more metaphysical space than I had ever allowed myself to be. My brother dying was a huge part of that. He catalyzed my interest into this realm. So, anyways, we were in New Mexico. We went to this little flea market. I love flea markets and thrift stores. And so we went to this one on a Sunday, and there was this gray haired woman, just like the archetype of the wise woman. She was so still and calm and very watchful. And I was drawn to her table because it just was like totally covered in crystals and gems, rocks, and jewelry that she had made. And I just was asking her a lot of questions. It's like I was almost, when you get like shaky or jittery because you're so excited and a little nervous? That's how I felt. And I felt her eyes like she was just watching me so carefully because what I think is she recognized how excited I was and also how shy and nervous I was to really let myself go into that world. But she answered all my questions really calmly and even went a little above and beyond to show me extra things. I took a picture with her because it was I don't know, it just felt special. So it touched me. Another big shifting moment happened for me when it comes to crystals. Um, I started dreaming about them, holding them in my hand like this, like super powerful. And just, I had all kinds of crystal dreams. And so, through my work with a therapist who also does dream analysis, she told me, and I really believe this, that I'm meant to work with crystals. The day that we had that session and talked about it, my partner gifted me this big, giant, thick ass encyclopedia. So this encyclopedia was a gift on the very same day that I found I am to work with crystals because it is a spiritual gift. When I was gifted this big book, the person who gave it to me had no idea about the session that I had. So I took that as a sign. I went ahead with it. I started buying crystals. I started just letting myself go into my curiosity. I stopped holding back. I realized the power of following the leads that you get in life and just letting yourself explore for the pure sake of enjoyment. I realized I don't have to make crystals a profession. If I choose to work with them, then that should be out of enjoyment first. And so I did start working with crystals. I started incorporating them into energy healing sessions that are done remotely. I started using them as tools. But first and foremost, I started getting to know crystals, meeting them like they're friends, feeling like they were my friends. And I enjoyed their company. I enjoyed their energy. And to this day, I still do. I've learned that we don't have to know all of the answers. We don't have to know what something will look like in the end. If we just follow how we're guided and trust that if something feels right and if it's helping us and maybe even helping others, then giving ourselves permission to go there is enough. I was working with a client about a year after that and helping her discover her spiritual gifts. And this client happened to be an old friend from high school who I hadn't talked to in a long time. So I told this friend about how I found my spiritual gifts, and I was using it as a way to show her that she can also discover hers. And so when I told her I found crystals were a big part of my growth and I'm meant to go into them. And it was super surprising because I didn't really think I would be so interested in crystals or so involved or just love them so much. And she said, I could have guessed that you'd be into crystals. And I said, really? What do you mean? Because she knew me in high school. She said, you always were carrying around rocks. You always had a rock in your pocket, rocks that I would find on the ground. And so when she told me, I thought, yeah, I do remember that. I'd have rocks in my pocket and I just liked them. So it's funny sometimes how in childhood we might see signs, or when we're younger, we might see signs of these gifts, or just these interests, things that make us happy, things that could be a hobby or just purely give us joy, things that might let us be in flow. We might see signs of it, but for so many reasons, we might cover up those interests. It might be because we're afraid we'll be judged, or we were discouraged from pursuing them when we were younger, or we might just be conditioned by culture that places higher value on other types of endeavors. So I hope that this, if anything, just allows you to reflect on some of the things that you've been interested in your life. And if there's a reason why they're coming back to you now, or you find yourself drawn to something new, I hope this gives you permission to be curious and to not overthink what it might look like, but to just simply follow that guidance and intuition, see where it leads, have fun with it, and go from there. I'll see you around.